How Sex Drives Evolution by Beti, Valencia, Astrid, Galindo, and Abigail Smith. When we look at species in nature, one that stands out greatly is the peacock. With its resplendent and colorful tail, the peacock is a mystery of evolution. Why would such maladaptive traits like those of the peacock's tail arise? The peacock's tail is a maladaptive trait because of several reasons. First, having such a colorful tail makes the peacock extremely visible to predators. Also, having such a heavy tail makes it difficult to carry and requires a lot of metabolic energy, especially when it needs to be completely regrown every year. Another example of a species with a maladaptive trait is the Irish elk, who is actually a deer and not an elk. The Irish elk has enormous antlers that can get as long as 12 feet and weigh almost 90 pounds. This puts a lot of strain on the deer's 9-pound skull. When we look at a lot of these maladaptive traits, we notice that most are male-specific. This is noticeable through species like the tungera frogs, bowerbirds, and red-collared widow birds. These male-specific traits are examples of sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is a difference in traits between males and females. Examples of sexual dimorphism can be seen in guppies, dung beetles, seals, and even the most notable lions. Before Darwin, these maladaptive traits and sexual dimorphism were both a mystery. How was selection responsible? Darwin noticed that the differences were strictly restricted to males. When we recall that the currency of selection is successful reproduction, we start noticing how sexual selection might play a role in the traits that may not be so suitable for survival. Sexual selection is selection that increases an individual's chance of attracting a mate. So a trait that we may consider as maladaptive might actually be a trait that helps attract a mate. There are two types of sexual selection. The first is direct competition, or as Darwin would put it, the law of battle. In direct competition, males fight each other for the possession of females. Since selection favors traits that will promote victories, traits such as large bodies or stronger horns and antlers are selected for. An example of direct competition can be seen in the North American elephant seal. Males undergo direct competition to claim females, and here the largest males tend to win. Some males take harems of as many as 100 females when they are victorious. The second type of sexual selection is female choosiness. Females find some male traits more attractive than others, which is why some males go through great lengths to impress females. Sometimes, males will display their large and colorful tails, like the peacock, or perform intricate dances, like the bird of paradise. Ultimately, it's ladies' choice if you want your genes to get passed on. It is important to note that sexual selection doesn't end with sex. Some species have developed post-mating competition. It could even be considered the third type of sexual selection. Post-mating competition is how males ensure that it is their genes and not another competing male's that actually get passed on. Some traits that have arisen from this type of competition are things that include chemicals that temporarily plug up a female's reproductive system, or even some that act as anti-aphrodisiacs. Another more offensive weapon is a penis scoop that scoops out the sperm from the previous male before it deposits its own. It seems that in sexual selection, the females are the ones that ultimately get to choose who they want to mate with, But why do females get to choose? Why is it that males must compete to be chosen? Why choose at all? And maybe, most importantly, why sex?
So, an important aspect of trying to understand how sex drives evolution is trying to understand why sex is important, why it happens. For a long time, biologists and evolutionists were very confused about why sex happens just because the parents are only contributing to half of the genetic makeup of the offspring, and it takes a lot more energy than, let's say, asexual reproduction. Parphenology genetically is a term which means producing eggs that develop without fertilization, which is basically like asexual reproduction. The only difference is that it's only females in those species that are able to produce those eggs and fertilize them. So when they do have offspring, it's just females that are getting reproduced, and they are identical. So that kind of lessens the genetic diversity that is available, and doesn't give as much genetic diversity as, let's say, sex and species that have sex. So sex is important in the process of reproduction. When species do have sex, there is a selection process that plays a role into who they mate with. Um, it is a matter of different factors that contribute to those things. Women in general are more picky, just because they have to put in a lot more energy into making the eggs, and once the eggs are fertilized, it takes more time and energy for them to take care of everything, basically. Let's say for humans, once we have sex and are pregnant, we are the ones that have to basically hold the baby for 9 months, which takes a lot more energy, and overall it's going to take more time. You have to take more time off. You have to take more time off of work than the male does. So that's why women are a bit more picky, because males don't have as much invested into it. It takes a long time for a woman to produce one egg, while men produce sperm regularly and they produce a lot of it. So mating systems is important in mate selection sometimes. There's a couple of different kinds of mating systems. There's monogamy, which is one male, one female. There's polygamy, which is one male, multiple females. Polyandry, one female and many males. And polyandry, which is multiple mates in a mating season. So they just usually, when it's mating season, they just try to mate with as many different males or females as they can during that season or time. So sometimes in selection stuff, there are things that you can say break the rules. So sexual dimorphism is pretty common, or it can be common in some species, which is just that genders are differentiated by color or size or different physical aspects. There has been studies that show that there is a correlation between sexual dimorphism and mating systems, which says that species that show less sexual dimorphism are usually more monogamous. That's not always the case, but it's just what's been shown more. And for example, like penguins look very similar, and there isn't anything that sexual dimorphism between them, and they are monogamous and stay with each other for life. And then usually we say that the females are more picky and such when it comes to mating. But sometimes females are the promiscuous ones, not the males. And they've noticed that when the behavior in gender changes, um, the sexual dimorphism changes as well. So, what you would see as males being more promiscuous than females, usually the males have the sexual dimorphism, but when it's reversed, when the females are more promiscuous, they're the ones that usually have the sexual dimorphism or the behavior changes in that. For example, the seahorse, usually the females are the ones that carry the eggs and are in charge of the eggs and everything once fertilization has happened. But for seahorses, the males are actually the ones that carry the eggs once they've been fertilized. The female transports eggs into the males. They have them in the pouch until the little babies are born, basically.
This section is going to discuss why animals choose. Do females really choose? And if they choose, what are they looking for when they choose a mate? This has been a famous disagreement in evolutionary biology. Alfred Russel Wallace believed that females were less colorful because they needed to be camouflaged. However, males were colorful because of their physiology. He was not convinced that females were in fact choosy. However, he did not explain why males would not be camouflaged. Another popular biologist, Charles Darwin, believed that male features evolved as a result of female choice, and females chose solely based on aesthetics. However, Darwin said that we knew too little about the minds of lower animals to know exactly why they chose who they chose. Females do choose. Females do choose, which explains sexual dimorphisms, but it's not only based on looks. Evidence shows that female preference is adaptive and most likely evolved by selection. In the image above, you see the New Guinea birds of paradise. The New Guinea birds of paradise have males with different plumages and mating behavior, such as taste for similar birds, although they are all very similar in lineage. You would think that birds that look so similar would have similar tastes in what's beautiful. However, how birds choose their mates is not only based on beauty, as you can tell by the lineages above. Preference is what helps females spread their genes. The benefits of choosing. There are different benefits and indirect benefits that affect how females choose their mates. A direct benefit would be choosing a mate who can help her produce more or healthier offspring. An indirect benefit would be choosing a mate who has better genes. An indirect benefit would be seen during the act of childcare, so the offspring live longer to produce and spread their genes, increasing the fitness of the female. A direct benefit would give the next generation a better chance of survival, increasing the next generation's fitness. Direct benefit. Some examples would be increased territory quality, such as a safer nesting location, increased parental care, such as more food brought to the young, and protection from predators. Females will carry on their preference genes, so other generations will be more likely to choose a mate who can provide better for their young. For example, a female in time will be more likely to choose a mate with a better territory. As a result, males will compete for this territory in order to mate with more females. So the evolution of preference and evolution go hand in hand. An example of direct benefit can be seen through the house finch of North America. The house finch is dimorphic for color as females are brown and males are bright in coloring. A study found that bright males provide more food for their young, which gave a direct benefit to the female. The preference gene in the bright males were increased by the females. This would explain why the males are bright in color and the females are brown. The brown would benefit the females more because they were able to camouflage themselves against predators. Indirect benefits could be adaptive, which would result in higher quality genes or arbitrary or more attractive genes. For example, a female bird will be more likely to choose a male who is brighter in color with fuller plumage because dull coloring and dull plumage would suggest disease. As you can see, the bird on the left does have a disease compared to the bird on the right who has no disease. The bird on the left has dull coloring and low plumage, while the bird on the right is brighter in color and has fuller feathers. A female would be more likely to choose the bird on the right because it indicates signs of a healthy bird. An example of indirect benefits can be seen through the peacock. Females mate with males who have more eye spots on their tails. However, males do not raise their young. This means that the males will not affect the fitness of their offspring. So why are females attracted to males with more spots on their tails? A study showed that males with more eye spots produce young that grow faster and survive better. Choosing good genes will increase fitness of the next generation, so the next generation will also have bigger tails with more eye spots. The sensory bias model would be more similar to what Darwin believed. Evolution of sexual dimorphisms is driven by pre-existing biases in a female's nervous system. This bias could be for another function other than mating, such as finding food. So it would result in no direct or indirect benefits from this bias. An example would be a bird who is more attracted to a red bird, because the red could signify the idea of berries. However, a mate wouldn't increase the intake of berries for the bird. So why choose? Females are choosy for a couple different reasons. Females are choosy in order to increase their overall fitness for themselves and their future generation in order to increase their reproduction and pass down their genes. Females are also choosy by nature, due to behaviors they have in other aspects of their lives, such as their behavior when it comes to food. The choosiness of females while mating drives evolution because they pass down their preference genes, and the males they choose will pass down their genes that were chosen for.